Hello, everyone, and welcome to Exploring Cinema. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I'm Adam.
And today we are cruising 10th Street with American Graffiti. Yeah, you like that?
Mm-hmm. Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Love it.
Hot start to the episode. We watched American Graffiti, the classic coming-of-age movie from 1973 from director George Lucas this week, and we're going to break it all down. Do you guys have any impressions of this before? I had seen this once, like a really long time ago, to the point where I kind of felt like I haven't really seen it as an adult and really wanted to rewatch it. Had you guys seen it at all?
No.
I hadn't seen it.
Okay. So a rewatch for me and a first watch for you guys. This was Adam's pick, which I really liked. Nice choice for...
Thank you.
Kind of ironically, in a way, the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
I'd kind of forgotten that it wasn't. Really quick, Adam, do you want to tell the people what American Graffiti is about? I was about to get into it, and then I was like, "This is Adam's job. Why don't I just step back, let you do your thing?"
Yeah, American Graffiti, 1973. A group of teenagers in California's Central Valley spend one final night after their 1962 high school graduation, cruising the strip with their buddies before they pursue their varying goals.
So yeah. I couldn't remember if it was like, and I still am not entirely sure if it was like actually the last day of school or if it was just kind of sometime in the summer when two guys were scheduled to leave town the next day. And it doesn't really make a difference, but
but there is
the timeline's a little weird there.
Yeah, but there is a dance, right?
Right.
There's an event. There's a school event. So makes me think it's at the end of the actual school year, but who knows?
And maybe it was different back then with like leaving for college. You just go right away, because that was what threw me off too. Because now school ends at like the end of May, early June, and people generally don't leave for college until like August. If you're
until like the school year starts.
But I mean, I think that probably varies across the country depending on where you live. I know they start earlier in the South. And they do and this is California in 1962. So who knows exactly what.
Right. That's what I mean. Like I was kind of projecting our experience onto this, and it's not necessarily the same. But
it's hard to tell without the seasons. California and their good weather 20 year round. It's hard to tell what time of year it is.
Yeah.
Fair point.
And Ron Howard's character does say to that like teacher at the dance that like, don't you remember, like, I graduated last semester. Like you can't talk shit to me. Like
that was what threw me off too. Like was that was last semester like 3 hours ago?
Yeah. Was it 3 hours ago, or was it like I've graduated like fall semester and I'm just been hanging around with my girlfriend and friends for a while before I'm supposed to leave? Like
right. And again, none of that really matters, but it did kind of make me think.
It's just hard to place.
Where exactly are we?
Yeah, you just get the sense it's the last hurrah before they all go to college and whatnot, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So at a glance, really quick, American Graffiti, 1973, directed by George Lucas on a tiny budget. This movie cost $770,000 to make.
Wow.
Yeah, and it made, would either of you like to venture a guess?
I know what it made because it's in the tidbits.
Oh,
section,
$10 million.
This movie made $140 million. Woo! Yeah, which is a big reversal from the last movie that Dylan and I talked about, which was Rumblefish, which had a $10 million budget and made like $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But both kind of set during similar eras. Like Rusty James totally could have been a pharaoh, or like that's what he wanted his life to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, there's just sort of different reactions from the public to this. This definitely like a more commercial type of movie, even despite not having a huge budget. Accolades: 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.4 on IMDb, and a 3.7 on Letterboxd. So positive all the way around.
Yeah.
It got 5 Oscar nominations. It did not win any Oscars, but it got nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actress for Candy Clark, who played Debbie, the girl the blonde hanging around with Toad all night.
Yep.
And then Best Screenplay and Best Editing. And then it won 2 Golden Globes. It won Best Picture, Musical, or Comedy. And it won Best Newcomer for an actor for Paul Le Mat, who played John Milner.
Yeah. That makes sense. I can see all of that.
So George Lucas got a Best Director nom on like his first movie ever.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, dang.
Yeah.
Stunning.
There's
George Lucas.
I'll spoil a tidbit right now, just this one, because there's so many for later. But this is the only movie that year that was nominated for Best Picture that didn't win anything else.
Interesting.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like, did you buy into the vibe and did you love it, or did it just, like, it seems kind of maybe polarizing in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or just kind of probably like the nature of the movie, kind of like you did really well with this nice, cute coming of age story, and we'll give you some nominations, but the awards are for the adults.
Yeah, the awards for the people who actually deserve these ones. And you're just like, oh, okay, well, bye.
But nice job. So really quick before we get into our opening statements, like the video if you like this video and this review, subscribe to the channel so you can keep getting updates. We do roughly one of these per week, and spooky season is right around the corner, so we will be diving into some sort of strange and obscure and classic horror movies that I think probably cinephiles are very familiar with, but your average movie viewer might not be. So we got 4 or 5 that we're really excited to get to, so that should be a lot of fun. And then Dylan, you mentioned this last time, and we've kind of been trying to start doing this, and this is the first time we've actually had it set in stone. The next movie, if you would like to watch that before we put out our episode in a week or two, we're going to watch Some Like It Hot from Billy Wilder, 1959. We haven't gone back to the 50s yet. I think American Graffiti in 1973 is the oldest movie we've done so far.
I think so far, yeah.
We started with a lot of like 2000s, and weirdly, we've done a lot of 80s stuff. So we're trying to spread the decade love around. So some 50s stuff. We'll probably be getting into some 60s, maybe some 90s movies here to come as well. So
when did Ron come out?
1985.
Okay. I knew it was later. I just couldn't remember how much later.
Yeah. So with that all out of the way, opening statements. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first, since I feel like it's something that a lot of us are going to say. So my opening statement is Dazed and Confused 1962. That's mine.
Yeah, that's all you got. Dylan's out.
I just think, I mean, how can you not just see constant parallels between those two movies? Especially having seen Dazed and Confused many times before this. Now going into this, it's just like, oh yeah, like this is clearly like the predecessor kind of.
Yeah, it was
American
interesting.
Vibes hangout movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting to go into this because I've seen Dazed and Confused so many times, and because it's one of my favorite movies ever. It was hard. It took me a little while to kind of just stop looking at this and comparing it to Dazed and Confused, and just kind of let the characters be themselves and let the movie have its own vibe, which it like really settled in with me after like half an hour of kind of like, okay, how are they setting this up? Who are the main people we're going to follow? How is this going to go? And then once it sort of settles in and each of the 4 main guys kind of has their own lane that they're going down.
Yeah.
I really, really liked it. And it definitely differentiated itself from Dazed and Confused. And it just didn't feel like I was watching the same kind of movie. So with mine, it's similar to that, but my opening statement is that George Lucas picked the absolute perfect year to set this story in. I don't think this is as effective as it is to me if it's set in like 1955 or something like that. I think 1962 being like basically the last year before all the 60s shit started going down, and making this in the 70s and like roughly 10 years later, and kind of having that understanding of the direction that the country went shortly after this. And looking at this as kind of the last time that this generation got to make decisions kind of seemingly on their own terms.
Or maybe felt unified.
That too. And like the choices were simpler. It was just, do you want to go out east and kind of explore the world, or you just want to stay in the town that you were born in? And a couple of years later, there was the draft and the JFK assassination and Vietnam, and just everything changed. And I think that's what lends a lot of power to this movie, is that it's a good story about the 4 main characters, but it also is just a great representation of kind of this last hurrah, as you said earlier, Dylan, of this generation.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That's kind of what my statement was along.
What you got, Adam?
Well, my statement was basically this generation's like last breath before life. It's just and with the hindsight of the 70s when they made it, looking at it, it's like we were just saying, like the 2020 hindsight is being like, well, now it's even, I can make this more impactful because each character is going to experience something that's very close to, you know, what's going to happen. So
right, and like I also don't think this works if it's set in 1962 but made in 1962. I don't think it has nearly the power.
Doesn't have the foresight.
Impact. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Then it just becomes like a cutesy little like, oh, high school drama movie. Like that's adorable, and it's like,
yeah, and you think that even if it was set, let's say at the end of the 60s, the conversations that the characters would be having would be a lot more. They'd be talking about race riots, they'd be talking about Vietnam, they'd have friends that were getting drafted and being sent. They'd be
right in the middle of it.
Yeah, whereas this, you know, is 1962. It's like the one, you know, Richard Dreyfuss's character, his girlfriend or whatever is like, or his sister, like his dream is to meet President John F. Kennedy. Yeah, like, it's just all these kind of naive and like just kind of hopeful, like youthful statements of just like, you know, like we're all on the same page here, and the future's gonna be great, and it's just like, you know, we'll be friends forever. It's just like all right before like, you know, it all splits up, and then. Yeah, that kind of idyllic moment in American history that maybe never really existed, but this movie kind of tries to capture it. I also feel like this movie kind of, in the way that some movies that look back, they capture it so well that they start to kind of like the imagery and the stuff in the movie kind of defines that era or becomes like, kind of like with the Doors movie, how Val Kilmer was so good at Jim Morrison that a lot of people just like when they think of Jim Morrison, they think of the image of the Doors poster, but that's actually Val Kilmer. Like, yeah. And this kind of felt like that with just the imagery and the music. It felt like George Lucas was like creating this like picture of like what life was like, this snapshot. And just like, I felt like it was so effective that's kind of defined that whole, just with the diner and the cars and the music and the milkshakes. It's like so well done that I felt like I was watching something that like, everybody else now just thinks like, oh yeah, that's what the 60s were like.
That's a designed aesthetic. Yeah.
It kind of, for me, it would just come after Rebel Without a Cause of like this era. I mean, that took place in the 50s, but we're kind of talking, you know, mid 50s to 62, similar stuff here. Right behind Rebel Without a Cause for kind of how I picture that era. So, I mean, I think that leads really well, Dylan, right into defining moments. What'd you have?
Well, so I had three of them. The first one, not really one moment in particular, but just the establishment of like the main drag, like the strip.
Yep.
And just the way we keep going back to it with different characters, and so many things that are important to the plot happen on the strip. And it just establishes this whole like, yeah, that's just what we did. Just cruise the strip, turn around, go back to the beginning, cruise the strip again. And that's where everybody was.
The radio.
That's where you met people, picked up girls, like all of it. It was that was just effective and well done. I totally bought into that. I used to kind of think that idea, like cruising the strip, like, okay. But like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I get why, you know.
Yeah.
So that was.
How annoying would it be, just to interject really quickly, how annoying would it be like at that time if you weren't one of these high school kids cruising around, like just hanging out, driving? If you're just trying to like get somewhere in town as an adult. Although to be fair, a lot of this is happening at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of it happens at like 10 to midnight.
Yeah, which back
right,
then,
but the end of the movie, it's like the sun is rising.
Oh yeah, that's like 4 a.m. But like I feel like that's way later. You know, what
it starts. Like, it feels like it starts at about 10 p.m.
It feels like if you were a business owner, it would be like, oh, like it's a nice, quiet, sleepy town, except for Friday nights when every high schooler, you know,
from like 8 to 3 a.m. is just
revs their engines on the strip constantly.
Yeah.
But you know, they don't, instead of going to a club or whatever, you know, the place where young people hang out changes, and but it was just interesting the way that was kind of established as like the spot, this street. And then I also had Meeting Wolfman Jack, which I'll get into this later, but I thought Wolfman Jack was a great part of this movie. Yeah. Great addition. The idea that like a DJ would be like everyone's listening to the radio and everyone loves this DJ, and then at one point you get to like meet him, like just that idea made me think of like other movies where a DJ plays a major role, or where like everyone is listening to the radio all the time. I mean, other than like obviously Dazed and Confused, but it's just
like I think Reservoir Dogs has a couple different people listening to
Sweet Sounds.
A character voiced by Stephen Wright.
Stephen Wright, yeah, and that makes me think. I wonder if he kind of got that idea. It was very, very fascinating, and I picked up on it early, and then just the way they kept going back to it, and then I think that scene where he meets Wolfman Jack is a defining moment for me. I think the way that that's handled, and how he kind of is like disillusioned at first, and he's like, oh, like he's on tape. Like he's not even like he's so disappointed, but then as he's leaving, he sees no, actually, that guy is the real deal, and it's just kind of like a peek behind the curtain. I just love that. So that was my other defining moment. Yeah. And the last one was the big drag race at the end with Harrison Ford, young cocky SOB Harrison Ford, who's so good in that role. I thought that was, it's like I felt like I knew what to expect, but I didn't. It went a direction that I didn't completely see coming, and it like plays a pivotal role in the relationship between Ron Howard and Ron Howard's character and his girlfriend. It kind of came out of left field. It was like, oh, these are all like, it's their last night, so they're going to remember this night. But then like the drag race happens, and like she almost dies, and it's like, oh man, like they really would remember that night like for the rest of their lives. Like, I could see them being like 70 years old married and being like, it all started when I got in that car with this kid from out of town, like.
Yeah, that scene is, maybe I'm reading a little too much into this, but I couldn't help but think of Vietnam coming when that car crashed. Just kind of them like driving quickly or like accelerating into the future. Okay. And then like possibly this sense that Lucas is kind of pressing onto the characters of like, maybe we just all should have stayed home.
Yeah.
And like that might be too much. Maybe it's not there, but I felt that a lot when that scene was happening and I saw the car crash and they survived it, but it was scary and dangerous and they almost died. And then they decide to stay. Ron Howard decides to stay there after that. And that felt a lot to me. Like maybe if we would have all just, like stayed home instead of going out to Vietnam, not that they had a choice.
Yeah.
Or like or I guess maybe I even think of it as maybe like a lament, for like the characters out there like Harrison Ford, because after he crashes, we don't actually get any more like dialogue from him. He's just sitting on the front of the car looking dejected and sad and disappointed and kind of unsure of himself. We've seen him so cocky and now he kind of seems just like, oh God, like what's this guy gonna do now? And I think that was maybe like a lament for like that generation, like, a lot of guys who went off to war or sped off into the future, went out west, and they thought it would work out well, and it didn't for various reasons, and kind of like it's very interesting. I like that. A lot of social commentary packed.
I like those picks quite a bit. I also had the race at the end with Harrison Ford, and then I just have some funnier moments to me. The whole liquor store sequence.
Yeah.
When it ends with that guy just like running out and tossing Toad the booze and then like sprinting away and the guy shoots at him. That reminded me so much of the liquor store scene in Dazed and Confused.
Oh, really?
When they pretend to rob the place, but then the guy comes back who they like destroy his mailbox and he's shooting at them in the car. Like that reminded me a lot of that. And then it was just a really nice moment, I thought, when John picks up Carol for the second time.
Yeah.
After he kind of basically tells her to piss off because they're around some like guys his age again, and he's sort of embarrassed by hanging around with her. And then she's getting kind of harassed, and he just sees it and drives back up and is like, all right, get in the car. And then they kind of have a good time. And just the way that developed, I thought was just a really sweet moment for that character who starts off kind of angry and he has a nice journey.
I like that a lot. I like the character's arc.
I think he definitely kind of knows what he is the entire movie.
Yeah.
And he's the one who like, he's come to terms with where he's at in his life and what he does. And I think that adds a lot to that. Like he's figured it out. It might be the wrong choice necessarily, something he doesn't want to do, but that's what he's doing. you know.
And I really loved when he, after the race, even though he won, he's feeling like he would have lost. And he's kind of walking away like, no, he had me. And Tony's like, no, man, like you're a legend. You're always going to be a legend. And like right as he says it, like the sunrise is in the background, and he's walking to his car, and it's just like, yeah, like, but it's so obviously it's not going to be like that. And then in the or at the end, you see that he dies first, like 2 years later, from the drunk driver. So that was very interesting too. But I love that shot.
Well, I want to bring up the end title sequences a little bit later, but then the last one that I had was just kind of the whole sequence with Dreyfuss and the Pharaohs.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was just so much fun.
Yeah,
and just kind of it starts off sort of menacing and dangerous, and then it kind of is, but he sort of embraces it as kind of this like one night fling, essentially. And I don't know. I thought that was a blast. So those are my defining moments.
Gotcha. I had a lot of those same ones. The only things I would add would be the like establishing shots of what the establishing scenes of what each of the guys is going to be like getting up to that night. With Toad, it's like seeing that girl or seeing I forget her name now, Debbie. And like getting her to actually get in the car, and he's like, oh my god, like what do I do? Getting the car, all of that, like
getting to use the car.
Yeah, all of that. Ron Howard basically breaking up with his girlfriend, like at the beginning. I think his name is Steve in the movie. And just like everything that's about to happen throughout like their saga. And then you're watching, Richard Dreyfuss's character have like, all right, well, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. And he's just walking around town. He's like trying to find something to do to like figure out what his night is going to be. And that's kind of what his thing is everything is just going to hit these new beats and hang out with somebody or hang out with these groups of people for a little while. And then he's like, gets kicked out of his ex-girlfriend's like friend's car and like all that stuff. Like, so there's all of those establishing shots and just being like, all right, here's the starting point of what are they looking for? And then how are they going to grow to, what the end of the movie shows up to be. So,
I like that. It also just reminded me of that scene where Toad backs into that guy. And like gets out of the car and it's like, I think you hit me. We've had an accident here. He's like, yeah, well, I'll let you off this time, buddy, but be more careful next time.
Yeah, I won't report you and just peel out.
I like that quite a bit. All right. So questions for the group. What do you got?
Questions.
The first one I had, which in my tidbits, I kind of debunked, but my question would be, which character do you think George Lucas was in this?
I think it would have to be Dreyfuss. Just because with the title sequences at the like where they end up, like he becomes a writer. I don't know if Lucas ever went to Canada, but I mean, I just find it, if there is a character in here that's supposed to be him, I think it would have to be Dreyfuss.
Yeah, because the other three don't fit. They feel more like creations or more like
stand-ins for certain types of people.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And also two of them die.
Well, yeah, but
so and he didn't and George Lucas, as far as I know, didn't stay in town and sell insurance.
With his high school sweetheart.
That's how he funded it, Nate. Like
the $700K.
Yeah.
Well, that leads to my question, which is even more generic. But who was your favorite character? Lots of characters in this.
Milner.
Directions.
Milner.
It's either Milner or I feel like it's Dreyfuss, and part of that is just because I think he's like easily the best actor of the four.
Yeah.
There are some things he does.
Hate it, Ron Howard.
There are some things that Dreyfuss does in this movie that I just like. As I was watching, I was like, the other guys can't do this.
Yeah.
There are moments he has that just feel so real, or even sometimes just like the way he reacts to things. I don't know. I like Dreyfuss is just fantastic. It's him or Milner, I think. As I kind of realized as I was going through trying to determine what my defining moments would be, that there weren't really many contenders for Ron Howard's character to me.
No,
it's just a lot of the same thing throughout the whole evening for the most part. But I also just remembered too, kind of that great shot of the band at the dance when they kind of
like the band at the
go from each. That was really cool too.
Probably Milner or Wolfman Jack would be my favorite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That the scene he gets is really fun. I love. He's just like, you sure you don't want a popsicle? Like, they're melting. Like, do you have a popsicle? And he shakes his hand. He's all like sticky, and he's like, God damn it! Like,
Well, and he gets so much. I mean, he gets so much not screen time, but his voice is all over this thing. It's introing and outroing almost every song, and then even like little skits. He gets like 2 skits, including one where everyone is just driving around listening to the same skit, and it's just like a Wolfman Jack moment dropped in the middle of this movie. Like,
yeah, that's a fascinating thing where just like how similar everyone's experience is in this movie, and there are like dozens of kids that we see. And we definitely don't have that.
No.
Everything's so sectioned off and personalized, and we can just choose from like anything that's ever been created to consume or experience, basically. And that is one thing that's just interesting about watching this is kind of the shared youth experience that all these kids have.
Well, like you mentioned, unified generation. This is the last time that they all had a consensus of like what is life or what it was about to be.
And I think there's a lot of social commentary packed in that little throwaway line where the one girl, they're all listening to Wolfman Jack, and she's like, "My daddy won't let me listen to him because he's African American."
Yeah,
he's actually not. But it was a common misconception. But then that leads well into like when they're all listening to like all these white teenagers are listening to this supposedly African American, almost like shock jock DJ, and they're all just, it's like a Friday night thing to do, and it's like all fun. And again, kind of to your point, Nate, like the stuff that would come later in the 60s, you know, like you know, if we get the impression that her family already doesn't want her listening to Wolfman Jack, imagine what the rest of the decade was like for
I think Carol definitely turns into a Vietnam protester, doesn't she?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the radio stuff goes well into my question is just where does this rank for you among all-time movie soundtracks?
Oh, I mean, I think it's interesting because I recognized all of them. The doo-wop era, I feel like you're getting a little less variation than like what they can do in Dazed and Confused and other soundtracks where you're getting like different kinds of hits, whereas this was kind of the same genre, same era, just hammering one after another. I really liked it though. I would say like maybe like top 10 or fringe top 10 probably for me. I just think I really liked it, and it was constant. I liked the establishment of it. But then, like once the movie ended, it's hard for me to go back and pick specific ones where it was like, oh, this moment when this hit. Unlike in Dazed and Confused, where it's like when he pulls into the parking lot with that car and it's Aerosmith.
Yeah,
I hope there weren't as many of those, but it was still really great.
I liked it a lot because I love music of this era, but for whatever, I don't like listen to it that much, but I love when it just shows up wherever I am.
It's it's an instant like nostalgia hit for something you never experienced, but you feel like you know so well.
Right. And so it was fun to just kind of get all of those and how it did go from like the doo-wop-y stuff, but eventually like the Beach Boys were playing and you can kind of feel that change as the night goes on a little bit. So I thought that was really cool. And yeah, just the fact that it's constantly playing, like they just have the radio on all night, essentially.
There's no score to this movie.
Yeah. It's just these like 50s and early 60s pop rock hits.
Yeah, like you're saying, we had the radio on all night. That's just what we did. It's so much more like in the moment than it is like it feels almost like a documentary of that as opposed to like, oh, we made a movie about it. It's like, no, that's what it was. You know, it just fits well.
Adam, did you have a question or should we?
Well, my question was, which one did you think was George Lucas?
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. All right. Observations and musings. I just had a couple little things that I wanted to bring up. What on earth does "go kiss a duck" mean?
I don't know, but I assumed it was akin to just the 50s, 60s versions of telling someone to go fuck themselves. Like,
that's kind of what I thought so too, because that teacher or the principal or whoever it was just responded, and then he says it again and like doubles down on it and like has a mean look on his face. And it's just, I could not say that out loud and mean it the way that Ron Howard's character does. I'd just laugh.
Yeah, I feel like people would laugh at you and be like, "Are you? Did you have a stroke?" Like, swear. Like,
right. That I just thought it was funny. I mean, I was laughing very hard and made a mental note of I have to bring this up because this is such an old timey insult.
Yeah.
And then I did want to bring up the title cards at the end that kind of tell us what happened to these four guys and just how much I feel like that was unnecessary. I really think the final shot of the movie should have just been Dreyfuss looking down over the town on the plane. and cut it there. I don't like knowing exactly what happened to these people. I feel like it takes away of some of the universality of it takes away from like them representing kind of a generation, even though like they're still meant to. Like Toad clearly goes to Vietnam, and they all kind of have their own experiences that obviously people of this age and of other ages have had.
Yep.
But it just really felt to me like it was better to just kind of end it with these four looking forward into what we know is coming, rather than kind of getting an answer on specifically what happens to them.
Yeah, I could see that. I felt like maybe just in 1973, he felt like audiences in general,
absolutely,
the resolution, and so I felt it probably was even more bold to just really leave it open-ended like that. Are there movies where, because there's other movies that do this type of thing? I believe, does Stand By Me do this?
Stand By Me, he tells us what happened to everybody.
Do you like it more in that movie?
In Stand By Me, I love it because it's just such a more personal story about his relationships with these kids at this age, and it's so much farther removed. I think like he's like in his 40s when he's looking back at when he was 12. So kind of, and it's sort of, and part of it becomes about like how you have these friends when you're 12 years old, and it's sort of in a similar way, treating when you're 12 the same way that George Lucas treats like 1962 here, where like then people are branching out.
Yeah.
And it just felt like knowing where the characters end up was a more essential part of that story. Also, just because the story opens with us knowing that Chris Chambers is dead. Like that's what sparks his memories, is seeing that reading in the newspaper that his friend died. So then you like not telling us what happened to the other two would feel weird when we're getting an answer on two of them already anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know, with this, it's not, it didn't like ruin the movie for me by any means, but I felt like just kind of letting it go I would have liked that better.
I thought that's what they were going to do. I was a little surprised.
Yeah. I can honestly take it or leave it. It wouldn't have bothered me if it wasn't there. I feel like I would have liked it. And I don't dislike necessarily that it's there, that title card. It reinforces some stuff that like Ron Howard like truly never really did. Like Steve's character never really did go do what he said he was probably going to do. But that's you kind of figured that would happen anyway. So yeah, it's a take it or leave it. That doesn't really make or break anything to me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Oh, Dylan, do you have one?
No, really just, Harrison Ford just is so perfect as, a cocky kid from another town who you're not supposed to like. And then also this is a terrific starting point for if we ever wanted to do Life of an Actor, Richard Dreyfuss. It's just literally, and then he takes off and who knows where that place
he does whatever.
Like, he went out east and he went to a small town in Maine and they had a shark problem.
He went to college for like marine biology.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. I had a few musings. The intro to the credits I thought was sick because it's like at the end of the movie and it just like it's a little xylophone, like a little like he's like ding ding ding, and it's like every time a key hits, a name pops up, and whether it's the actor's name or so it bounces back and forth, and it's like ding, 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 and then
I thought that was really cool.
Oh, okay,
really cool effect.
Yeah, that was really fun. I thought that Milner was basically like James Dean from Rebel Without a Cause. That was just kind of fit all the angsty, like rolling up the cigarettes in your shirt sleeve and just looking kind of like a greaser.
Visually, he definitely has that look,
and a lot like Rusty James too from Rumblefish.
For sure.
Greaser.
Then I getting in the same side of the car used to be so much easier and just so much more hip. Like all the time, like every time a girl gets into a car, they get out and she gets in on the driver's side and then they just slide in after her. And it's like the bench seats were so cool. Like
I'm also a big fan of both the cars opening like in the middle.
Oh, the car.
Oh, yeah.
In the middle.
Yeah. That's just, whenever they can do that, that's just so much cooler, I think.
It just looks neat. And then I had one other thing, but I don't think I'm going to find it while I try to read it. So we can pass.
All right. Yeah. Dylan, did you have any more or on tidbits?
Tidbits.
So
I got a couple. I got quite a bit,
Come
actually.
on, Adam.
So to start this movie, the Vespa crash scene was not scripted, which is great. Like that just happened, and then he just kind of played it off like because it was totally in character for
fantastic
for him to do. And it's a light crash. It's a light little into something, which I think is great.
Yep, that's great.
Speaking of the music, this movie got turned down by producers a bunch, or by studios a bunch, because it had 40 songs that were on the track list for the soundtrack, and that was gonna be so expensive to get like royalties and stuff for. And the only reason Universal finally decided to do this movie is because Francis Ford Coppola signed on to be a producer, and he had just come off of his success from The Godfather. And they were like, cool.
And amazingly, that ties in with Rumblefish again. Francis Ford Coppola directed it. It's got a lot of characters that are greasers, and you can totally tell he's like, man, this is the movie I want to make. I can't make it right now because I just did The Godfather. But this kid, George Lucas, can make it, and I love it. I love what you're doing, George.
This movie took about a month to film. It used 300 pre-1962 era cars for all of the drag scenes.
Yep.
Harrison Ford was 30 in this movie. Yeah.
Wow.
He turned 30 during production.
I mean, that actually, his character also could be like, this isn't a case of somebody playing a high schooler, because like that guy could be anybody.
Yeah,
he's just a dude looking to race.
Yeah.
Interesting. 30.
Ron Howard and the guy who plays Toad were both 18. So when we said earlier, like Dreyfuss is easily like the most talented actor, it's like, yeah, Ron Howard is also 18 years old. He's barely getting out of the shadow of being like from the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah. Or, was it Happy Days?
The Happy Days comes after this, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's wild though, because like you think the drag scene, like, you know, they're all out there in the field, and Harrison Ford is 30 years old and Ron Howard's 18.
Yeah.
I didn't really. You just think they're all young people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the girl who played Carol, Mackenzie Phillips, was 12, so she was like so young.
Whoa.
She's got a wild story that I won't get into. I can tell you off camera, but she's got a wild
like
story.
14.
Yeah.
I think she's supposed to look 14 or 15.
No, yeah, that's fine. I just like, if I would have had to guess, I would have guessed that she was 14 years old.
Yeah. All right. So the more of the interesting ones, due to the low budget of this movie, George Lucas was unable to pay all of the crew members, so he gave a lot of them screen credit in lieu of actually paying them. And so they all accepted. Typically, up until that point, only department heads were usually on the screen credits, and so now it's like standard that almost everybody who works on the movie gets a screen credit. It's like because of this movie.
Wow,
interesting.
That's really cool.
It's a little movie lore almost.
It's really weird that we're kind of in the middle of these strikes, and there's just this movie that like he wasn't able to pay them, but he gave them credit for working on the movie. And that was seen as sufficient.
Well, and it's also helped them like get other jobs.
No, I get it.
It's just kind of like
it's like now it's just like, I don't have money for you, but you can tell people that you did this.
But I can pay you an experience, and we're like, absolutely fucking not. Like, you are gonna pay me.
I'll put your name on the screen for 5 seconds.
Yeah,
deal.
So you're welcome.
Right. Which is also funny because of what this movie made, what you mentioned earlier, a budget of $775,000, made about $140 million. This is among the most profitable movies ever made based on like that math.
I can totally see that.
Bananas.
Wow.
And the last one, I've got 2 more. This one's the coolest, I think, but during most of the film, sounds on the radio were enhanced with a slapback effect, a near simultaneous echo. And that was to simulate the sound of multiple radios at different distances, all tuned into the same station.
I knew it. I knew they were
doing cool.
I knew they were doing some weird audio stuff, because it's like, not only do you hear it when they're in the car, but when another car pulls up, it's always already playing, or in the background when cars pass, they have music. So that's but cool.
Like the levels adjust when other cars come. Yeah, that's
because it's just the same thing. Guys. That's what was so cool about having like Wolfman Jack, that moment dropped in, is because like everyone's listening to that, and you can hear it. Like your buddies down there, the people you don't know, are also listening to the same like cool radio station that you are. It just enhances how much cooler that guy is, how much cooler that DJ is.
That's fascinating. That's a great tidbit. While you read the last tidbit, I'm going to step away and maybe I'll have a tidbit of my own, but we'll see.
Ooh,
all right,
excellent.
reading.
Perfect, because this one takes a little bit. So when I said earlier that I debunked my own question, here is that debunking. The main characters represent different stages of George Lucas's life. So it says Kurt Henderson is modeled after his personality when he's at college at USC. Milner is based on his teenage years where he was like street racing, and in junior college where he like hung out with a hot rod enthusiast group known as like Custom Culture, where he grew up. Terry represents his nerd years as a freshman in high school.
Is that
so that he
Toad?
Yes, Toad, yeah, and his bad luck with dating. So like that's what all that's supposed to be. And then Kurt is him actually leaving the nest and going to college and all that stuff. So
interesting. I did want to bring up too. This is the 50th anniversary of American Graffiti this year.
Oh, no way.
And they just released 50th anniversary special edition 4K for this, which honestly, after watching this now and like I really liked it, I kind of want it.
I could get behind that. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to look up what kind of special features there are because
that
they
would
got
be
some
interesting.
cool ones. I mean, that's for me like when I buy physical stuff.
Yeah, that's what you look for.
Yeah,
because I think like I was reading a couple reviews on like Letterboxd.
Oh, that doesn't even come out. Sorry, until November 7th.
Oh, so we got a little bit of time. Perfect.
Yeah.
I was reading some of the reviews, and one of them said something like, "I wish we got more movies out of George Lucas like this before he started making Star Wars."
I think I read that same one.
This is a genuinely like good movie that just didn't know he had it in him based on only seeing Star Wars and that kind of stuff. Like, I'm shocked that I was like, oh my God, that movie's like incredible. I really liked this aspect and this aspect, and I can see what he was doing. It was just, that's a different director that I didn't know. So,
all right.
I have tidbits in hand. So,
excellent.
As you can see, I've got quite the vinyl collection. Here's the American Graffiti soundtrack.
Oh, that's super cool.
It also flips down.
Hold on a second.
Ooh.
We're gonna
full screen him. Not me.
There we go.
Oh man.
Yep.
That is amazing.
Cover flips down. Got scenes from the movies and stuff inside, full track list. And yeah, there are a lot of songs on here. We're
playing that the next time I come over.
I know. Yeah, I knew I had this. And then just while we're on it and we're talking tidbits, I also wanted to mention this tidbit. This is the box set of J Dilla Donuts, an iconic classic album that he made before he died. And there's a song on here called Anti-American Graffiti, which has Wolfman Jack on it.
Oh,
and all of that makes sense to me. I always thought like, oh, that's a cool name. And I always thought like, who the hell is this guy? Like, because the voice is so unique. I was like, this has to be some super obscure, like, and then, I heard Wolfman, and then I started watching this movie. I'm like, it's that guy. And then, and then I'm like, the J Dilla American Graffiti connection makes sense. And then, I got the vinyl of the soundtrack. So we'll put that on.
That's really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's really like
cool.
That's one of those, like, what is it? Rick and Morty, that Willem Dafoe kind of moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Adam, did you have any other tidbits, or can we dive into awarding the McCabe Coat of Excellence?
We can dive into awarding the McCabe Coat of Excellence, I believe.
All right, you want to bring up our super fun image here?
I will. Here we are.
Yes,
we're playing for this.
We're playing for the coat. So again, if you haven't seen any of our episodes yet, we're big fans of the movie McCabe and Mrs. Miller here, and particularly big fans of McCabe's coat. So at the end of our episodes, we like to award that coat to anybody associated with the movie who we think is worthy. We'll each choose our own, and if we don't think anybody has earned it, then we're not giving it out. So I mean, I can go first here. For me, I mean, this is George Lucas. This is his vision, his execution here, and I think this movie is easily worthy of the coat.
Okay, Adam.
I agree. I think it's to George Lucas. As I was just saying to Nate while you were gone, that I've read a comment that said, "I wish I got more George Lucas like this before Star Wars." And absolutely, like this is a phenomenal film I didn't know he had. So I'm giving it to him.
Yeah, I think
I know where Dylan's going with this, but
I think mine's gonna be a little controversial. But I just feel like George Lucas already has so many accolades. Like the man went on to create Star Wars. I just feel like he's he's got enough coats. But if you bring up that image of that coat one more time, real quick,
I will do it for you, sir.
You know who would look amazing in that coat? A man whose name is Wolfman Jack. That's who would look amazing in that big coat. And it's not just for his, it's partially a lifetime achievement award of sorts for his. Yep. He was an American DJ from 1960 to 79. I went down this whole rabbit hole on him after the movie. Fascinating, fascinating guy. And I mean, one of the coolest. Like, you want to talk about a cool life? Being like the biggest American radio DJ in that era, amazing. And just that voice and just everything. So I'm gonna give it to Wolfman Jack. I just think he brings a very unique element to this movie. Really adds to the aesthetic, and then I just love the scene where we get to meet him. So I'm giving mine to Wolfman.
All right, and with that, we can get into the closing statements. And for me, it's just that American Graffiti is both timeless and a fabulous time capsule. Nice. And if you're looking for something to kind of capture this era, I don't think it's going to get much better than this. The way it's kind of structured and just the nature of it makes it very rewatchable. So yeah, great job.
Yeah, mine would be it's just an iconic movie that really creates the visual and kind of audio or visual, just kind of the aesthetic, the language that we think of when we think of this era. It's just so effective at being like you said, a time capsule. And also, I just think that if you like hangout movies or movies that all take place over one night, I just think this is like a must watch for you. I think if you really like those types of movies, you got to see kind of one of the original classic defining ones, which I'm sure influenced the ones that would come later. Yeah. So,
yeah. My first thought was, or my first closing statement is, who knew they said boss in the 60s?
Oh yeah, boss. Yeah,
that hat's absolutely boss. Like, this car is boss. But then it's just a time capsule of the early 60s before everything went down. That just you need to see it and experience it and know what that's what America used to be. And obviously it's not necessarily the best versions of everything in America, but that's what America was, and that's a perfect encapsulation. So
I also, I guess a question just came to mind. The title, American Graffiti. What do you think he's trying to say there?
I don't know exactly, but it puts an image in my head of basically this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It just fits together so well.
I definitely think like graffiti, I think young people.
The language of like youth.
Yeah, like painting the town red, kind of youth, on the run in the streets, kind of. But like you said, it's a youthful, childish thing before they would all go on to, the very turbulent 60s.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. I mean, great title.
I feel like it's bold too. Anytime you title a movie like American whatever, like your movie
starts to
can't suck.
Yeah.
You're planting your flag and it's going to stand for something.
Right.
Like, it's going to mean something now. And you're like, oh, I hope it's a good thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it. And Adam, I think it is your turn to put a wrap on the show.
I do. And I'm actually going to swap the quote at the last second here.
Okay.
We're quote swapping.
Audible.
The Audible. You know what I want out of life, and it's just not in this town.